How much do you actually think about the grip on your putter? 97% of the start lines of our putt is controlled by the face angle, and the biggest way we can get our face angle is consistent is by the way we grip the golf club. And our only connection to the club is the grip. So should we be thinking about what grip we've got on our putter a little bit more? Golf Pride certainly thinks so. Now, in a bid to improve your putting, Golf Pride have been doing some serious research, and for this they partnered with Sam Putt Lab to collect a serious amount of data on loads of different golfers and what it looks like when they putt well. And the research they've come back with is pretty interesting. They've looked a lot at the hands and how you hold the golf club, and they found that actually both hands are not necessarily doing the same thing when you're doing the putting stroke. So each are contributing different things. So why should the grip be the same size at both sides of the grip? Now, this is a really interesting theory, and it's really influenced how they've designed these new putting grips. And you can see that in the name. This is called the reverse taper range, and what you can see is they're actually wider at the bottom than they are at the top. And this all comes back to this research about how you should hold the golf club to have the most effective putting stroke. So why is it smaller at the top than the bottom? Well, the research showed that if they have a smaller top half of the grip, it actually helps anchor the top hand better. And this is going to help with that stability, so keeping the club face square. Then the right hand being wider actually allows for smooth acceleration because there's less tension there. You're not having to grip it as hard because it's a little bit bigger. Throughout the testing, what this actually showed was the combination of these two led to less what Golf Pride are calling micro levers. And that basically means there's less tension, you're less likely to start flipping the club, and overall you're just going to be a lot more consistent. Now, there's 3 different grips in this reverse taper range, are all slightly different and kind of designed for different styles of putters. Now, first up is the round. And from the name, you can kind of guess the shape in here. It is round and it tapers and gets larger at the bottom. And Golf Pride are saying this is probably going to be the most versatile and the one that suits the most variety of people. I think what's really interesting is when you pick these up, it just feels a little bit easier to kind of get your grip on the club because it tapers wider at the bottom. There's a little bit more room for that right hand. I do really like that. Now, after this, we have the pistol. This is probably my favourite so far because I feel like you have really good left hand stability with this. It's quite square at the top, and I feel like the left hand sits really squarely down that and gives you a really good face angle. Now, interestingly, Golf Pride are saying this works really well for left hand low putters, and I can see how that would work with just kind of the shape and sizing, because it also slots really nicely into kind of your right hand if you had it at the top like that, but also would suit people who are used to a more traditional, smaller grip, which is definitely what I've been using more recently, so it kind of makes sense while this one kind of feels right to me. Now, last up is the flat. This is very similar in terms of the round one, but it has a much flatter front, hence the name. Golf Pride are saying this would be really good for people who have more of like a palm-to-palm putting stroke, or potentially people who don't have loads of arc to the stroke. If you're someone who's pretty straight back and through, this could be a really interesting option for you. Right, that's the theory behind it. Let's see how I actually get on with them. Now, I'm going to start with the pistol because that's one that feels most natural to me, and I've also had it put on one of my own putters, so probably feel a little bit normal, be able to gauge kind of what's kind of different from the grip and not just different from the putter. Now, I definitely echo what my first thoughts were here. When you put your hands on the grip, I have my left hand at the top, and because you've got kind of that thinner flat section, it feels really easy to get it square in your hand, and which is obviously going to make it really easy to control that club face. So the big thing about this range is all about club face control. How square can you keep that club face? Because that is almost 100% of your start line control. If we can't aim the putter and we can't get the face pointing where we want to, we're not going to hole many putts. So obviously there's other factors. I've got to be able to read the green correctly and point the club in the right place. But actually, once you're able to do that, getting the club face square is super important in terms of good putting. Ooh. I know the tech did say this, but I actually do feel like there is less tension in the right hand, which is pretty interesting. I would never have thought that just changing the sizing like that would affect that. Oh, it's not going to go in if I don't hit it though, is it? I'm actually really struggling with my pace control with this putter. And those were actually super consistent. Obviously it's first hit, so it's hard to know if it's due to the grip, but that's pretty interesting. I've been very speedy with this putter of late, and they were super consistent. Okay, I'm swapping it up to the round. This one probably feels the least natural to me just because it's probably the biggest putter, I would say. And I've come from a very small grip before this. It's interesting throughout this range, you can get all three models in either a medium or large. So I do have this in the medium size. If you're someone who does like a larger grip, you can go up to that large offering. I really like the fact it's narrow at the top. It just sits so nicely. It feels so much easier to grip. But then I like the fact you have so much room for your right hand. I think it works really well. What's inevitably going to happen now is I've pointed the camera at me and I'm going to box a putt and you're not going to see it. I'm going to get really annoyed. I know the whole story here was meant to be about face control, but I actually really feel like reducing that tension in the right hand and being able to put less pressure through the grip there because it's bigger, my distance control is unbelievable. I mean, all of these are within half a foot of each other. Okay, I did leave them all short, but I would just like to show you my distance control there. These three are literally on top of each other. These two are basically on top of each other. On a 30-foot putt, I would be really, really happy with that on the golf course, especially in a competition. If we think about the fact 30 foot is the point where a PGA Tour player 3 putts more than a single putt, that dispersion would be going in my bag every time, like, I would be so pleased. Okay, last up, the flat offering. I would say moving from the round, I do prefer this feel a little bit. I just like having that flat front and side to kind of anchor my left hand. It just feels like it sits a little bit squarer than it does on a round grip, but that's just my personal preference. I would say this feels a little deeper this way, similar to how the taper did. So it does feel like you can kind of get that right hand over a little bit more. So I could see how that might work if you're someone who's like palm to palm and wants to be more that way. It's quite interesting you pick some of these grips up because you feel like you want to move your grip around dependent on how it feels, which is quite interesting. So it's definitely worth kind of picking them up, trying them all and seeing what kind of suits your physical grip the best. That putt broke a lot. Jeez. Not always the best idea to go to really slopey greens to test putters, unless that's what you're used to on your home course. I think there's just quite consistent themes through the range here. Obviously there's different shapes and sizes which are going to suit different people, but actually it feels really roomy on the kind of, well, my right hand, but your bottom hand. And the left hand feels really good for start line control. Pretty consistent again. Now I'd say the pistol is definitely my favourite and it is on my putter, so I'm going to hit a bit more of a variety of putts with that. Now what I really like about this putter grip is the fact it's controlling two really key elements, but kind of pairing them together. So if we think about that left hand really adding stability, helping control the face, and then the right hand being more free to have better pace control. Now you might think, why are those two things helpful together? But actually if we look on greens like this where it's very slopey, it's all well and good being able to point your face, but if you don't have the right speed to match that direction, you're never going to kind of guess the pace and the break and the entry point correctly. So actually having something that's helping you control both of those variables could also really help you with your green reading, because you're going to be a lot more consistent in kind of your start line, your depth of putt, your pace, which is going to allow you to kind of figure out how much it's going to break a lot more consistently, which is definitely a big plus point for me. Just. Now obviously there's no grip in the world that's going to ensure you hole every putt, but having your face angle that little bit better is definitely going to help. And actually for me the biggest thing I've seen so far is that pace control improvement, which actually I would kind of take over anything else. Because if you can get your pace good and kind of eliminate those 3 putts and really have more 2 putts out on the golf course, that's probably the thing that's going to improve your putting more than holing a few extra putts. Now, another thing that's quite different in these grips compared to what we typically see with Golf Pride is they're not rubber. They are very into their rubber in their full swing products, but actually this is polyurethane. And the reason for that is the weight. These are a lot larger grips than, say, a typical pistol or a kind of full swing grip. Using this material allows them to kind of play with the shape and the sizing a lot more without affecting the swing weight of your golf club. So that's really important. It also means we can play around with the design a little bit more and the textures, which I think is definitely important in a putt grip. Break. Overall, I would say that I feel like I'm rolling the ball really consistently with this. It hasn't been true of late, and I've been using this putter, so the only variable I've changed is grip. You know what? I was kind of pretty skeptical when I listened to the product presentation on this, which is bad. I know it's bad, and I love putting. And I love the data, I just wasn't sure. But actually, I feel like Golf Pride have proved me wrong. I should have known that. They did have loads of data to back this up. This is definitely a really interesting grip, and I think it could really help a lot of club golfers. Definitely one worth trying out this season.